From community souks to the largest shopping malls in the world. Obviously, the Middle East has seen an unprecedented transformation in the last decade or so. Sabah al Khair, good morning. My name is Patrick Fallmann, and I'm here today on behalf of the Store Makers Middle East, also representing Umdash in the region. For those who do not know, we create and realize retail interiors for any premium and lifestyle retail brands across the region. I'm super pleased today to introduce and have a discussion today with Raffaella Campagnoli, Chief Strategy Officer of MAF Retail. Please applause. And Mr. Ayman Beydoun, Deputy CEO and Group COO of Brands for Less Group as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. I guess those who are not in the room, I hope they at least made it home from the beach party last night. My first question today, Ms. Raffaella, leading strategy for MAF Carrefour. How would you see the consumer in Dubai different from, for example, Riyadh? And do you adjust your strategies across the different markets to suit?
Broad question, yes. So let me speak a little bit about MAF Retail, right? MAF Retail is an omni-channel operator. Omni-channel meaning that we do groceries offline within hypermarkets, supermarkets, convenience stores. We recently launched our new discount concept. We have our own Myli, which is health and beauty concept. Plus, we're also manufacturer, so we manufacture our own foods. The main facility is in Dubai. We produce around 100,000 meals per day, which are sold in our stores and also into the HoReCa channel. On top of this, we have our online business, which is directly managed within the biggest key countries and with partners within non-big or not still evolved markets, right? So talking about the differences between Riyadh and Dubai is a lot more complicated than the question. We tackled our strategy and especially our portfolio strategy by taking all the 16 markets where we operate, and we divided the markets across like archetypes, right? What are the similarities? What kind of income our consumers have? What kind of behaviors, needs? How digitally savvy are them? And how urban are them, for example? So we came out with 4 different clusters. Every cluster's got their own similarities, but also differences. So Riyadh and Dubai, they're really very difficult to compare in the sense that Riyadh, Saudi Arabia is within a country which is continuously developing, right? We don't really know, and it's crazy complicated understanding what the future of consumers in Saudi would be. So we are trying to matrix as much as possible and deep dive as much as possible on understanding, for example, that Riyadh, like a mega city, is very similar to some parts of Dubai, while the surroundings, which are less urban and still rural in terms of groceries, more bakalas driven.
I believe Riyadh is now about 9 million people, same as the whole UAE.
And continuously growing, right? So in these kind of countries, you see that, for example, our online is growing 50% year on year. Why? Because they really love to have an immediate grocery service, like 15-minute stuff, similarly to Dubai. But then if you go into the Jeddah or other regions of Saudi Arabia, it's definitely more similar to our Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah. Yeah. So it's really a super deep clustering exercise that every time we do.
I mean, one of the reasons why I was asking the question as well is because you've got the premium butchery concept in Mall of Emirates store, which I quite like for going to shop some steaks as well. Are we going to see such premium butchery concepts across other locations as well, or is that unique for the Dubai or Mall of Emirates shopper in this case?
Well, inshallah. First, our Carrefour at the Mall of the Emirates is the biggest Carrefour in the world, right? So in there, and that is the advanced archetype that we have, where we try new concepts. Our consumers are definitely more advanced. It's a kind of modern shopping trend and style that we want to bring in, and we test. Probably a butchery as big and as complicated, because choosing that kind of meat is very complicated. You have to be advanced for doing that, right? Replicated everywhere
Also
would be definitely difficult.
the light.
The light, and then the aged meat. You need to be able to choose it, so it's for an advanced consumer. Replicating that concept would be difficult, possibly part of it, yes. And what we are also testing right now is how to enhance our non-food experience. So non-food is even more complicated than foods because of the online. There's a lot of disruption in the market. Competitive landscape is completely changed.
I mean, you mentioned omni-channel at the beginning. Are there trends towards technology, health, and sustainability equally important across the region, or are those three different trends again varying across different markets and different cities?
In general, they're equally important. Within our 16 countries, there's a balance, right? So especially the GCC countries, for example, where till some years ago, local manufacturing was scarce and still food was really a lot imported from external countries, then food healthy and food safety is still not an issue, but a challenge that we are facing in some of these countries. In reality, when you look at health, GCC, and especially Saudi, unfortunately, is one of the countries in the world where the level of obesity, diabetic, cardiopathics is very high. A friend of mine a couple of weeks ago was telling me that Nutella in Saudi has got the highest consumption per capita in the world.
Wow.
It's 1 kg per year per person.
I do like Nutella as well.
So there's a lot to do in there. What we are trying to do is definitely, on one side, on the food side, source locally and healthy as much as possible. On the other side, developing also our own private brands, right, which are locally manufactured, quality, price level is definitely balanced. So we offer our customers also their own way of eating. Localization in food is very, very important, but at least locally made.
Yeah. Eamon, to also move over to you, the typical shopper in a Brands for Less store, can you describe that one as well? Who is the typical consumer, and how did maybe their shopping behavior change now, as we saw during COVID and after COVID? Did you see any transformation?
Absolutely. So I think the typical shopper would be someone who's looking for a great brand at a great price. So a bargain hunter, a treasure hunter, and that's the concept. That's what Brands for Less is all about. Now, has the behavior of the customer changed? Yes, and I think that's across all retail channels and across all retail markets. I think what has primarily changed is how the customer buys, what the customer buys, and how the customer pays for what he buys. So they used to buy more home goods, fitness products in COVID, in the pandemic, but then after the pandemic, this has shifted to lifestyle brands, for example. And again, they didn't have the option to buy now, pay later, for example. And then I think that evolved because the market had to adapt. And so did we, as Brands for Less Group.
In Saudi especially, I think in the past we saw primarily luxury retail brands moving in there as well and opening up shop. Now there's a shift more to the mid-range price segment as well. We also see a lot of Asian concepts entering the market and trying to take it by storm. How do you respond to that, and what do you take from this trend?
Well, I think that Saudis being part of the workforce has added value to what and how they value a product or how they purchase a product. So today they are part of that workforce. They work really hard and get paid for the way they work. And now they appreciate what they buy. So now they're looking for something that makes sense, one. Two, that is a good quality, and that is of good price. And I think that's where the Asian competitors, or even locally homegrown concepts has risen. So, and I think competition is always something that's extremely healthy, and that only brings value to the customer itself. So I think we're always happy to have competitors around, whether it's in the same segment or even in a different segment, but offering the same ASPs or even USPs. And I think that, again, only brings value to the customer itself.
I mean, to talk about competition, Raffaella, we see so many large companies across the region now going to the stock markets to raise more capital. Are we going to see a race for market share amongst the dominant players? Is there going to be a race for dominance? And what are the risks associated with such a landscape?
Interesting question. Yes, market is getting a bit more concentrated, like it's happening in the Western countries, right? Where I don't think that there's going to be a winner which takes it all. I don't think either that the market is finished, in the sense that we have continuously growing markets. Saudi is one of these examples, but we can talk also about Oman, we can talk about Jordan. Yeah. Many of these countries around us are really having a curve which is not yet reached maturity. You see that traditional trade, the bakalas, the mums and pop stores, for example, in grocery, or the small shops as well, in fashion, are really everywhere. So is that a market share that we want to get, or someone will get? We'll see that. It's also a question of being smart on how you strategize your future, right?
And can I ask, how is MAF Carrefour as a market leader defending its position? Is it cost leadership, quality leadership, or differentiation, or a mixture of all those factors in the different markets?
Yeah, I think, as I was saying before, it's a complex system of variables, right? Especially my friends in fashion, I kind of envy you, because when I was working in fashion, we didn't have the frozen, we didn't have the cold chain, we didn't have the fresh chain. Grocery is really complicated. And why is it a complex system of variables? Because we're trying to mix up a good matrix between the formats, the categories of our products, international and local brands, and then according to the different market niche of consumer segments that we want to reach, right? So with more, I think that the key for success is trying to be flexible and understanding what consumers are going to need, and then immediately adapt with new formats or with concepts which are really good for that area. And I tell you, the other day we were talking with some smart consultants, and we were like, how come these two stores, they are 300 meters far from each other? So you can believe that it's the same area, the same type of customer. In reality, the average basket size, value, and mix was completely different. So, you know, this hyper segmentation that we are trying to do, I think is going to be one of the elements bringing success to us.
But how do you then keep a unified underlying value proposition across your brand, across the overall brand, when the categories or even locations are so different from each other?
We don't keep, we're not a company super standardized and super format driven, right? With more formats we have, with more we have flexibility to adapt. With more, for example, our vertical integration on food is actually allowing us to get to consumers with products that we don't find in the market. Okay. We understand what they need, we don't buy, we make. And that vertical integration aspect is one of the key elements that we're following up on food to be able to respond immediately and with agility, let's say, to market's needs. On non-food, partnership is key for us. Not everyone has got the same needs, right? Not everyone wants the same type of textile, for example, same type of design or color. We have, within 16 markets, in some we don't manage the winter seasonality, in some others we're forced to manage the winter seasonality. So how do we get that flexibility? The ecosystem needs to be shaped in a way that our partners are helping us to make it happen.
So Brand for Less Group obviously is in the non-food segment. You have many different categories and formats, sorry, yes?
For now.
For now.
For now, okay. So there is an announcement that you want to make?
No statements.
Okay, still confidential. But there's obviously many different categories and concepts that you're focusing on. You also have concepts like Toys for Less and Homes for Less and Luxury for Less. What are you focusing on now specifically, and is there room for more categories or more brands and labels to join your portfolio?
As long as there are words that you combine together and you still have the for less format, then we're always going to diversify.
Okay.
That's to answer the first part of your question. Now, we are currently concentrating or focusing on scaling the brands for less integrated concept. Integrating meaning having the homes division, or the homes category, toys category, fashion and apparel, cosmetics and others, all within the brands for less bigger format. And I think we've perfected our size format in order to make sure that the sales densities make sense as well. Yes, we've established Homes for Less, which caters to home treasure hunt seekers, the same way we've done for Toys for Less, but that was to cater to certain communities and to test those models in smaller spaces. We've launched Luxury for Less, but that's a completely different, because that's not a horizontal expansion, that's a vertical one. Okay. So we wanted to again target a niche within our customer base that's looking for more luxurious brands, but again at affordable prices. We've recently launched Beauty for Less, for example, and we've entered the world of services. That's a ladies' salon services, and we've piloted the first store in our small BFL shopping center in Motor City. And I think the plan is to also integrate that services part into the Brands for Less integrated big formats.
So how many categories or brands do you have in a typical Brands for Less store?
So as we speak, we have an additional brand coming in into our stores. So we have new brands every single hour. I'd say we have more than 3,000 brands in our stores, again spread across more than 11 categories. And I think our local buying team and our buying arms around the world, they work tirelessly to ensure that we procure the right brands at perfect prices, unbeatable prices.
For the brand owners sitting out there, do you still have room for any new brands or also homegrown local brands to join your portfolio?
I think we do have room to accommodate almost all the brands in this region. We'd happily consider discussing with partners locally and internationally in order to make sure that this integrated Brands for Less concept becomes accessible to all customers at their preferred prices.
And the homegrown brands, could there be a factor of differentiation as well against the Asian entrants that don't have them?
I think because they can locally adapt quickly and be more dynamic and proactive than concepts coming from abroad, whether it's Asia or other continents. I think the local homegrown brands would excel because they are more dynamic.
Raffaella, as a market leader, you also operate one of the largest e-commerce and omni-channel platforms across the region. I want to go a little bit in a different direction now. Retail media, I don't think there was much discussion yet on the conference about this topic. It's obviously a big topic. How important is it to you and your business as an additional revenue driver?
You know that yesterday I was outside. There's a company, Retail Next. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
They work for us, and they told, I was just asking, what are you doing, guys? We monitor the entrance and exit of people from stores, including yours. I said, okay, good to know. They said that 18.5 million people entered just in the UAE Carrefour stores between January, February, and yesterday, mid-March. So then I went back to the online guys and said, how many millions people did we have? And they said, Rafa, we have a 25% growth year on year versus last year. So
and we've seen the same trend.
Right?
Yeah.
COVID somehow helped us on that. So what we call ad tech, the advertising online, is one of the tools retailers can play to get brands closer to our consumers. That is one of the elements that so far, I must admit, was not done very well. In the sense that retailers, they always have, you know, the opportunity, but also the risk to have brands going direct to consumer, which is perceived like a competitive threat somehow. In reality, on online, understanding much better what you buy and why you buy it and what are the features of products, it's really important, especially now where all consumers are trading down. The majority are scared about getting to the end of the month and they buy less stuff more frequently, also online. So offering opportunities to brands to go and understand and talk to consumers is something that we're going to do much more, and we're going to promote much more, not just because it's a source of good revenues for us, but also because it really brings value to consumers. So if I remember correctly, last month, La Vache qui rit, this cheese, they did a very good strategic entrance into the marketplace. They increased 50% their sales because they explained very well the feature and the benefits and the quality of the products. So that's something that TV advertising is not really offering you, because you get consumers right in the moment of buying, and then you can definitely convince them or
Cross-reference, yeah.
Cross-reference, explain them, get their trust in that moment.
You have an e-commerce platform as well. Are you leveraging retail media already in similar ways?
We do, absolutely. And I think, again, the pandemic has changed the way the customer behaves or the way the customer buys. And I think the online platform has been a platform of advertising our concept more than the brands within the concept.
Okay.
And that's something we try to relay also to the brands when we work with them directly. That today, the Brands for Less concept, online or offline, is a department stores of 3,000 plus brands. We don't advertise brands, we advertise that treasure hunt concept and that treasure hunt behavior that we'd want our customers to have when they enter our stores. And I think today online representing almost 15% of our business is something, again, with a huge expansion that we've had or we're going to have within this year or the coming few years. I think the 15% portion is going to grow. Parallelly, we're again expanding offline. So I think that portion is a very important factor for us, not only in terms of revenue, but in terms of advertising the concept in the region.
So where do you see retail in the region is going to head? So I want to talk a little bit about the future now as well in the last few minutes. If there is a global economic recession looming again, and we had over the weekend, we had the story with Silicon Valley Bank, how would you see the region affected? Do you think the region has become more resilient and domestic consumers are spending enough that the retailers are shielded more from external effects like this?
I think that COVID has taught us, or taught every retailer, whether it's a food or non-food retailer, that a lot of lessons. But one of the lessons would be that we have to concentrate on the local customer, and we have to make sure that we retain that customer and engage with that customer. Not only because we want them to buy a product, but rather engage with that customer on an experience level, providing that customer with an experience that he'll never forget. He's going to forget that product after a year or two, but he's not going to forget that experience that he had when he entered the stores. And I think with COVID and with that lesson being learned, I think I'm not going to say it's going to have a zero effect on retailers, but it's going to have much less effect than it would have had before COVID. Yes, there might be a slowdown globally happening by Q3 or Q4, but I think the resilience that we've had, and I think the great work that the leaders in this region are doing to make sure that the region is least affected, I think that's a great story to believe in.
And maybe the last question to both of you, a little bit is, do you think, because of all of that you just explained, that the regional brands and homegrown concepts have an opportunity to grow beyond the region into other markets? Is a strong possibility, so turning the market from a consumer market to a creator market, and now actually to potentially in the future more of an export market, venturing out into other regions is something that we are likely to see, and if yes, which regions?
I think we've proven to be a very successful homegrown concept, especially with Brands for Less being expanding in the whole GCC region. And I think you'll hear a bit more in the upcoming months on our expansion to other regions as well. And I think homegrown concepts really do have that capability to expand to Southeast Asia, Central or Eastern Europe, to countries that we did not used to believe that we could have done it. But I think with Thailand, with a lot of technology being embedded in the systems today, with us perfecting a homegrown concept and cementing it in this region, this has created the foundation for any homegrown concept that has done the same to expand globally.
And Raffaella, you're obviously operating in so many markets already. Which markets would you have the eye on, or would you recommend other retailers in the region to have an eye on?
For expansion, you mean? Well, I think that, so my suggestion also to my boss, to my group, is that for now, let's hold and see a little bit, because we had COVID, we had recession, we have inflation, we have depreciation, we have war. So I don't think that ever we saw something so disruptive in retail. So we have the West Africa side, for example, under development in terms of ideas, in terms of identification of countries. Consider that MAF Retail can run Carrefour in 30 countries in the world. So now we are just operating in 16. And obviously it's a continued validation of risk opportunities and on how and where to grow. I think that for now we really need to laser focus on what we have, making sure that we are strong enough to pass this terrible moment, as well in countries like Egypt, for example, where depreciation is continuously beating us, or Lebanon, where still there's no stability or very little stability. We'll see what happens in Turkey very soon with the new elections. So we live in markets where you never get bored.
So I guess a mixture
Africa.
between a wait-and-see approach and still eyeing other opportunities in new markets as well.
And grow the core.
And grow the core, yeah.
Absolutely.
The time is up. I can see that big on the screen. I hope we could share some interesting insights. Thank you very much for sharing certainly your knowledge about consumer behavior and where you see retail is going in the future.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Big round of applause for the panelists.
Thank you.